We are back
Welcome,
for
welcome.
part three.
Part
Women
three.
versus women. Today's the big topic, women and religion, and what it has done to create enemies out of women towards
Yeah.
women. And it is a big one. I ended up the notes that I made originally. I ended up expanding on them because there's so
Oh,
much there that we
oh well,
probably won't get to half of this because it's such a big topic.
maybe we'll have to do like a part. Maybe this is
Yeah, be
part
part
3A.
3.5 or
Yeah,
three and a
this is
half.
part 3.1, and then we'll do a part 3.2 or something.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
it's when the problem is we don't even realize that this is where it originated from. Is religion has been such a part of the Western culture for such a long time. We'll say the Judeo-Christian religions, not some of the other ones, but it's been such a part of our culture that we don't even realize how long we've been believing things just because we were told that for 1,000, 2,000, we'll use Jesus, 2,000 years or just under 6,000 or around 6,000 if you're Jewish. That's how long that the Bible has been in existence as we know it or we think. But
Well, and then there's those of us that have had no religious upbringing, like
yes,
me, right?
and
My dad is British, and they are very Christian, Catholic. See, I don't even know the difference. But anyway, they are very religious. Like he went to an all boys school and they, had their Lord's Prayer and various other things that they had to do. And he objected to it kind of being shoved down his throat like that because
yeah,
he sort of questioned the whole thing, that I was not raised that way.
right.
So I feel like I know next to nothing about religion. So then to um, have these rules or these tenets or whatever you want to call it, to realize that this stuff is sort of seeping in even without actually taking part
Right, right. It's
is
yeah,
kind of interesting, right?
yeah, it's made the rules from behind. It's like the Wizard of Oz, it was behind the curtain, establishing all these societal rules and norms and what women can do and what they can't do or should and shouldn't do. And some of them, there's a scripture that they could twist to back it up, but there's a lot of it that's not even in there. It's literally just
Mm,
stuff that somebody interpreted as something wrongly. And they said it long enough and loud enough that we started believing it's actually in the Bible. And a lot of things aren't. And one of those is there is a big teaching between, okay, Christianity is based on Jesus's teaching supposedly, but actually if you go through and you were to read the New Testament, most of what we adhere to as Christianity are the teachings of Paul. And the apostle Paul never met Jesus, like literally he came a couple hundred
oh,
years
I was
after he
I was
died.
just going to say, is he one of his disciples? But if he
Yes,
never
but
met him,
after
then he
the
wouldn't be
fact,
one of his
not the
disciples.
original 12, not the original 12. He came like after
Okay.
the fact. He never even met Jesus. And he
Interesting.
was the one, like, for instance, the first one, women are told not to be, we're too emotional to be leaders.
Hey.
And Jesus did not tell women that they could not use their voice. Paul did. He said that women should be silent and they should not teach and they should only be listening to men, that men should be the teachers. That's the way it is. Jesus was actually quite, if you go by today's definition, was very woke. He was very egalitarian in the people he surrounded himself with, up to and
Hmm.
including the first person that saw him resurrected was Mary. So,
Well, wasn't she one of his like?
well, she wasn't an official disciple. She was one of his
No,
people.
but she was
Yeah.
definitely one of his followers,
Oh,
though, and or
absolutely,
she followed
absolutely.
him. Because I actually did take a course because I through another coach that I follow, um, and it was a course on the women. And so there was one called Thecla and one called Mary, and then there was obviously Mother Mary and
Right.
like Mary Magdalene, and then Mother
Yeah.
Mary, and there was a couple of others. I can't remember who they were now, but it was interesting to hear her take on the women that sort of didn't follow the norm
Right.
and followed
And the
after him, and like
women
you say,
who,
were there when he was resurrected,
yeah, and
and
they were the ones that never, it's like they didn't betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Those were the men. The women stood by him because he actually, based on just the stories that are in the Bible, he treated them as people, like equal humans to the best he could in the time they lived in. But the problem is now women have lost their voices And we've been taught that we're not supposed to have a voice, which is one of the reasons so many women have visibility wounds or being heard, like saying, like even expressing a preference or an opinion to your romantic partner. Most women, especially older women, there's been times you just didn't because you just wanted to keep the peace. Well, this is where this starts at. And so
Mm.
now when we have women who are starting to speak up like us and like other women, then other women jump on the bandwagon and say she's too aggressive or she's a bitch or she's a this or she's a that for just having the nerve to speak her mind or have an opinion.
Well,
And
yeah, it's not the norm, right?
yeah,
And it's those trailblazers and those I don't know, whatever other words you want to use,
yeah,
right? But I mean, it would be like um well, anybody. I mean, look at Danica Patrick,
yes,
right? I
yeah,
mean, the foremost woman car racer,
yeah,
right? You know, I mean, imagine the hurdles that she had to go through to infiltrate that boys club,
yes.
right? And you know, and then all she became was a body, or about her looks. I think she did like swimsuit
She
issue
did
for
it. Yeah,
Sports
when she
Illustrated
made
or something
Sports
like that, and then it
Illustrated
was
or
like, well, that's
something,
all she's
yeah,
good for, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, anytime a woman stands up, yeah, we're seen as less than or too much. And it's kind of interesting how we can be both, right? Like you're less than
yes,
because you're speaking up, but because you're speaking up, you're also far too much. And so it's kind of that whole like, she's too skinny, she's too fat, she's too sexy, she's not sexy enough. We're always at the polar opposites. We're
yeah,
always at the
yeah.
end of the
It's like you,
spectrum. We're either here or we're here.
yeah.
And it's interesting to see that it probably stems from there. And
It does.
I
And then
think,
you move into the women are told to control. Okay, here about 80% of churchgoers are women. Which on one
okay.
hand you say, well, women are more spiritual than men, which probably has some truth to it, but religion is not designed for love. It's designed to control people's actions, predominantly women's. It controls our behavior, the way we dress, our words, our movement, who we can be with, who we cannot be with. And so the women just sit around and they're doing everything for everybody. Men sit back and do nothing, but we're basing our roles and what we are allowed to do on a book, a Bible that is actually unverified. Do you know how insane it is that we use? How do we prove that the Bible is real? By pointing back to the Bible. So we're usually taking a non verifiable text, saying something as the gospel that it's true. Just, and when you start breaking
Well,
it down, it's insane. But almost, okay, 66 books of the Bible, all male authors, not one person that is written about or written as the author in the Bible met Jesus. These rules were made to accommodate men because this is where men's insecurities come in. But we believe it. And therefore, when a woman dresses a different way, or she talks a different way, or she acts a different way, women are the ones dogpiling on. I mean, we expect it from the men, but it's the women.
yeah. Oh yeah, a lot of times it's more the women than the men. We are catty as all get out when it comes to this sort of stuff. Um, so it's almost like, you know, women policing women, and the men just get to sit back and go, ha
Yeah, they set the
ha.
stage, and then it's like throwing us into a ring, probably in Jello, because men like a good two-woman Jello fight kind of thing, which
Or
is,
mud.
that's a whole thing. I'm like, there's just something icky about it that in general is like, what about that appeals to you?
I know. Well, and what's interesting is
Sorry.
I think it was on TikTok because that's where I've been lately. But anyway, it was interesting to watch a few that have come across my FYP about how um, because it was written by men, it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Like there is no actual, as you say, verifiable
No, there's no way to
proof
verify
that
it.
so and so
Yeah,
said something and meant it this way, right? Because
right,
anybody can say something, and
right.
then depending on your perspective, depending on your gender, depending on your upbringing, depending on all like 100 different factors, I could read the same scripture as you, and we might have completely
Completely.
different
Yeah,
ideas of what that scripture means. But then someone else was calling someone else out by saying, oh, so you're only reading that scripture. What about this one? And it was kind of like in contrast. And so it's like you're basically picking and choosing what you want
Right. Yeah.
out of the Bible to fit your narrative
And also they,
because
again, take it out of
that's what
context, but
works for
if,
you. And I was like, well, that, oh,
oops, my internet connection is unstable. I don't know.
okay, you're back. Take it
Okay,
out of
there I go. I
context.
was like, no, it's just,
You're back. You're back.
it's
So
literally,
taking it out of context.
yeah, they take it out of context and it also, and that's just, okay, that's just using the Christian religion. I was talking about the other day that there was a Muslim woman on there talking about the hijab and I forget the other one. I'm shame on me for not knowing it. The one that only lets
The
the light
burqa.
out of their
I
eyes.
saw somebody the other day, and it's
Yeah,
a that's the burqa.
yeah, and she was saying that that's not even written in the Quran. That is someone's interpretation of something they read. It's actually there is no mandate that women be covered up because it began many years ago, back in the
Hmm.
70s. Muslim women weren't covered up. That is a relatively
No,
modern
they weren't.
day thing. And again, it's everything is designed to regulate women's behavior, but we are part of the enforcers. They set the stage, but women are, like you say, policing other women to the point where we're the ones picking
Well,
women apart.
and I found that interesting actually because, and I don't remember when it was, but I think it was around that time that 22-year-old, I think she was a reporter, was murdered
Yeah,
over there. I think she was saying stuff that they didn't agree with or whatever, or she like only part of her head was covered or something. I can't remember.
yes,
Anyways, it was a big uproar, and it was around that time that I realized, and I don't know if it was because of stuff online or if I was curious and I went and did some research or whatever, but yeah, to find out that in the 60s and 70s and probably even earlier, they did not wear a
no,
burqa or a hijab or any of that stuff, depending on, I guess, and I'm guessing, complete ignorance. I would have to do some research on the difference between the burqa and
I don't know if it's
the hijab is
denomination
probably
within, yeah,
religious.
Islam, yeah, or which
Yeah.
who
Um,
decides again? Who does
but
decide that? Yeah.
yeah, but what's interesting is though, is that how I imagine slowly and insidiously it sort of came about into their society, right?
Yeah,
Because if they were wearing colors of the 70s and fabrics of the 70s and being all like, mini skirts and
yeah,
go-go boots and stuff, which, was kind of the style back then. I don't know if they followed
yeah.
that style, but that was the style back then. Um, how they went from that to this
Well, and look
and
how far
how,
backwards they've rolled, and
you know,
we weren't paying attention as women. We sat there and watched this happen. So they had to start covering themselves. Now girls can't go to school. They've rolled everything back to the point of a woman cannot even literally step outside of her home if she doesn't have a male escort now in some of those countries. Like
yeah,
cannot step foot outside her house, cannot use her voice, cannot be publicly talking in public to another person unless it's the man she's with. So they're
yeah,
literally, and we sat there and unfortunately we watched this over here in the West, and now it's happening here.
yeah,
Where there is getting, and but the problem is we keep coming back to that is women policing other women because women are always picking apart how a woman looks. I mean, there's some of the most worst comments, about her appearance, her body, what she's wearing, what she's not wearing, like she's too old. It's like that's one of the things we have to stop because we are part of the problem. We're doing their work for them, and there's
well, and
nothing to base it on.
totally.
There's no reason they should be doing that.
Well, and the other thing too is that, have you noticed, and again, I don't know who started it, could have been a man and torch and ran with it, um like, to say that someone is a Karen.
Yes.
And a
Yes.
lot of times the videos that you see are of women being really quite like nitpicky or opinionated about something that they probably
Yes.
have no business being nitpicky about or whatever,
Yeah.
like you're parking in my spot even though it's like a public shopping area or
Right.
whatever the case may be, right? But do we have a male equivalent of it? And I don't know if we do.
They have some, you
I
have
mean, everyone's,
one called a Chad or something like that, but you'd hardly ever hear it. Rarely ever. It's
well, okay,
almost
so
always women.
yeah,
Huh?
a cougar.
Yes.
Who came up with that term, right?
Yes.
We get cougar, men get
They
distinguished.
get distinguished. They get to be, they get to be a
They
player.
get gray hair and
Yes.
they look good.
Yeah, the silver fox. And they get to be all these really kind of magnetic type things that you might want to be near, whereas we always get reduced to animals. Our body parts are reduced to like an animals. We get like women are cows, or they're heifers, or sometimes so they get called pigs. They get, and don't even get me started on our genital region. It's like, and
Yeah, I know.
even your breasts, like which a lot of people call them tits. Well, that's a play on the word teats, which is on an animal.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't, it's like
Yeah,
we don't
it's,
even realize what we're saying when we repeat some of these words. We don't understand where they came from, that we are being reduced to animal livestock
yeah.
because that's the way we're seen. Which comes back to,
Well, and it's just, oh, I would, no, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and that's where we also come back to where in our identity and how we're showing up is the 18th century coverture, which we've had multiple conversations about, where women don't even realize how they lost their identity over religion. And that's where we
Mm,
started fighting, because that's where everything became a competition, because everybody's trying to, because you lost your identity, you got absorbed into the man's identity. That's why women take their last names. Other countries don't do that. The West does that. And most
mm,
women will fight you on that. They will fight you on the right to take on their husband's name. And they don't even realize why they're doing it or what it means. I mean, you literally lose your legal identity even today. But we just
yeah,
pick
and
on this. If a woman wants to balk that, well, what's wrong with her, you feminist liberal? I mean, I've heard women called dykes. I've heard them call just any name under the book from women, not men, women, because a
mm.
woman doesn't want to take her husband's last name.
Yet the only time that it is marginally acceptable is celebrity.
Yes.
That seems to be the only time that it sort of isn't really questioned, right? Like Shania Twain.
Yeah.
Granted, her name
Yeah.
isn't.
If you're a
I think her middle
celebrity,
name
you
is
can get away
Shania.
with it.
You know, her
But
real name is Eileen.
even that though, there are now, and couldn't give you a name, but I know there are a few that they keep their real name, their birth name publicly, but privately they still use their husband's names.
Yes,
It's
and
like
I
an
do
email.
believe that is Shania. I
Yeah,
do believe because her actual real name is Eileen.
yeah,
So I think she became Eileen Lang when she married Mutt Lang. Obviously, they're divorced now. So, yeah, it's very very weird to me. Um, Although back in the, I want to say mid '90s, when I think they were called the White Stripes when they came out, it was a
I
male
don't
and
know what
female
that is.
duo. He sang most of the time, and
Okay.
I think he played guitar. She played drums. I thought they were siblings. Turns out they were married. And he took her last name. Her name is
Interesting.
White. His is not. So he took her last name, and they did have an interview about that. I'm sure it's probably on YouTube somewhere. And I do not remember what his reasoning behind it was, but it had something to do with like, well, it's just a name, or, like, why should she always have to take mine? Like, why should she have to take my
Yeah.
name or something like that, right? And so, yeah, that's why they became the White Stripes, is because her last name is White and he took White.
Okay.
And so she's Meg White and Jack White. And so that's why at first I thought they were siblings, right? Because they
Yeah,
had the
he
same
wouldn't
last
even
name.
occur to you that he took her name, because that's how ingrained it is.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah.
look at other cultures, and it's very common for women just to keep not only do they keep their last name, the children have her last name. Which brings me to a whole other point. It's like, men they're always so concerned about their lineage. Like they need their child needs to have their last name for
Their
their lineage.
legacy.
But
Yeah.
then you got, okay, say you have 5 kids, and then your husband dies and you have 5 more kids with another man. Well, now your kids all have different last names because it had to follow the father, where if you'd have just let it follow the mother, they would have just all had one shared name. Not that it's bad
Yeah.
or good or bad on either side, but just think of how much life easier it would be if all your children had your last name. you know?
Well, yeah, it was a royal pain. I mean, I know with my kiddo, um, yeah, he was very, you're going to be my last name. And I was like, whatever. To me, it was just a name. I didn't
Yeah,
need a name to know who I was. Right. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And so kiddo was born. We gave him that last name. And then after I left, I was like, no, I did not have the wherewithal to fight it or anything. And
yeah,
if I had changed it before he was a year, I probably it wouldn't have been as big a battle. But
yeah,
anyway, it became a battle.
yeah. No,
Like
absolutely.
I said you could make your name the middle name, and it was like, well, my last name doesn't make sense as a middle name. Yours does, but mine
Yeah.
doesn't. So anyway, I asked our governing bodies here to hyphenate it, and they were more than happy to do that. He fought it and fought it and fought it, and
Really?
eventually they said, too bad, this is what it's going to be, right? So now he
Yeah.
has a hyphenated last name, and he even complained about it to a judge when we had one of our sessions, and they were like, that's not up to me, that's up to that other governing body, you have to take it up with them. Well, they changed it, blah blah blah. And oh yeah, he gave me grief for years
Yeah, it's
about
so
that.
interesting. Yeah, their identity is so tied up in that last name. And when in fact, again, women do 80% of all the child rearing. So why wouldn't it make more sense for him to have your last name? Because,
Yeah.
chances are, okay, 50% or 52% of all marriages end in divorce. More than likely, you're going to be the one doing most of the child care and doing all the legal things that that child has to do. And it just would be, in some ways, easier if you shared a last name, just because of the way the legal system works. It's just, there's not as many
Yeah.
questions asked if you share a last name. But again, women are left holding the bag with that too. And then we, again,
I,
jump on other women for not taking their husband's name. Like
and I
we
guess
take it personally. You know?
Yeah, and I guess I would be curious to see where that ties back to religion, like what sort of,
Well, because
like
it comes out of
what tenet
coercion.
talks about that there, that kind of became
Okay, well,
like
here's the
the
deal.
be all end all.
In the Bible, there are no last names. Didn't exist in the Bible. Go find me one. There is no one has last names in the Bible.
I guess the
That's
only
where,
one would be Mary Magdalene, right? She's the only one that actually has a last name.
yeah. And when not, and I haven't researched to where that comes from, but that might not even have been her last name. Usually
Yeah, I
sometimes
mean,
we
who
got,
knows, right?
Jacob Blacksmith because Jacob was a blacksmith, that kind of thing.
Yes,
Like
yeah, they were named after their profession
their
or their
profession.
career or whatever they
Yeah.
had. Yeah.
And so they're basing it again on something that is not in the Bible. And women are over here, they're going to plant that flag and die on that hill that you're supposed to take your husband's name because it's as if it signifies unity when it actually has nothing to do with unity. It just
I'm
doesn't.
kind of curious, seeing as we're talking about this sort of stuff, does Magdalene have any kind of
How many people think
like a like
Christ
a,
is,
a career type, like does it have
yeah.
any
It's like, what
sort
did that a
of
word in? What's the etymology
um
of that word? Because do you know how many people believe
yeah,
Christ is Jesus's last name? Christ means the anointed one. Jesus, the anointed one. That wasn't his last name. He was Jesus of Nazareth. He was Jesus who was from Nazareth. It's like people have made doctrine and laws and traditions out of things that literally didn't exist at the origin of the Bible as we know it.
so Magdalene means, now this is AI, so take it with a grain of salt, might have to do a little bit more research on this, but Magdalene means woman from Magdala, referring to a historical town on the Sea of
Yes, that makes,
Galilee
yes.
and the biblical figure of Mary Magdalene. It can also be interpreted as a reference to the German word Madeleine, meaning girl or young maiden. The name has French origins and is linked to a devoted follower of Jesus. So it actually does sort of have to do with her following him and possibly being the one that was there when he was
Yeah.
resurrected. So Magdalene isn't
It's actually a
actually,
place. I mean, yeah, that's a,
like, it could be seen as her profession.
yeah. Yeah, and also because there were, I think, three Marys of the Bible, the most common ones, and they needed a way to differentiate them when you're talking about them. It was just an easy way to do that. But again, not her last name because she didn't have one. It's like we
Yeah.
literally made entire things
Yeah.
around this, and it doesn't exist. And like women are willing to die on the hill, and we don't care if you take your husband's name or not. But I'm just saying, you do need to understand that you are relinquishing your legal identity when you do it. And it came from coverture, which stemmed from Christianity. And it's literally what in that one phrase in the Bible, two shall come together and be one. They took that one piece, like fragment of a scripture, and they created
Yeah.
a whole doctrine in society, in a world society, based on that. And it doesn't even say anything about that. It's like, it basically, you're saying the man and the woman are going to have sex and procreate. That's really what it means. That's what becoming one means.
Yes.
But they took it
Yeah.
so much farther, and now we're like, oh yeah, I have to have my husband's last name. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And
Well, and I guess what's interesting is, and kind of the whole point of this and what we are doing as a whole with this inside out transformation is really, I think, just getting women more,
just
nope, that's not
aware.
right.
We
What,
want people.
yeah, aware, and like not necessarily doing stuff or believing stuff blindly, which we do in the social media world, right? Like
To
we've
do.
sort of been indoctrinated, isn't even the right
Yeah,
word, but you'll know what I mean when I say this. To research, to not take like what I've just read as the gospel, right? Like
yeah.
now we're going to have to go because AI gets its stuff from all over the place that
Oh
it could
yeah,
mean anything. So, like maybe do a little bit of deep diving. And that has become a part of our culture now, is that we know TikTok is not always real, Facebook is not
yeah.
always real.
Nothing. It
With AI
literally
coming out,
nothing is real anymore. Yeah, you really have
research
to.
research and discernment is key,
It is.
but it's not something that we've done in our own lives with regards to the rules that
Yeah,
we sort of try and uphold everybody to. And I think that's what our work is kind of centered on, and what these conversations are centered on, is just becoming aware of what we're listening to, or the rules that are sort of being like,
yeah.
this is how it has to be, but why?
Yeah, now why do
Like
you
I know a lot
believe
of
it?
people.
Why do you believe what you believe? I mean, it's just a questioning. It's just a little bit, we call them our rabbit trails. It's like, just go down the rabbit trail and figure out why you believe what you believe. If you're going to take a stand, no matter what it is, just know why you're backing that position up, and make sure
Yeah,
you
because
really
nothing is
agree with
right
it.
or wrong. It's
Yeah.
just you just need to be able to be firm in your belief.
Yes.
I took his last name because I stay at home because,
Yeah.
instead of, well, this is what, scripture, blah, 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 says that I should do.
Right.
you know, um, you do it because it makes the most sense for your family. It's what you prefer. Whereas I think so many of us are kind of, like for so long, I'm not religious because, well, I didn't grow up religious. My dad didn't want us to go and do Sunday school, and mom could have cared less. And so it was just easier to not, right?
Right.
So am I not religious? Well, maybe I don't necessarily believe in organized religion, but I
Right.
believe that I've come to a certain level of spirituality, and my son seems to believe very heavily in Jesus and God, and so I've started to be like, okay, what does that mean? I've never talked about it, so he wouldn't necessarily know about it, so how does he know about it? And so we've been having these conversations, about this stuff.
Right.
And um one of his school photos, you remember back in the day, you get the school photos and they were always just that same background. Well, now
Yeah.
there's probably like 30 different backgrounds, right? Well, we were scrolling through and he saw one with a cross and he was like, I want that one.
Interesting. Does he have any
And
friends that are Christian, like that are pretty active?
no, no, I don't think
Interesting.
he does. I don't think any of his friends practice in any way. At least not that I know of, not the
Yeah.
ones that I interact with regularly. So it's just something that I've now had to sort of start learning about some of the angels and start learning about Jesus. But
Yeah.
what's really funny is, growing up in the time that we grew up in, and I don't know about you, but I remember some of the favorite things about going to my doctor's office or my dentist's office were those little religious books.
Oh, yeah.
We'd
No, we
read
didn't have
about,
those. Not in the
oh
doctor's
yeah, there
office.
were so many of those
Interesting.
books, and it was always about like different disciples and gospels, and like the story of Mary, Jesus, and Joseph and all of that stuff, right? And the shepherds and the wise
Interesting.
men, and they were these very colorful big print stories, and I used to always thumb through them, and I would
Interesting.
love reading them. But as soon as you left, you forgot about it because that was
Yeah.
not your everyday.
It wasn't a part of
You
your
know,
belief system, your traditions. Yeah.
yeah, they were just fun stories, right? Like I didn't know that they were real, supposedly based on the Bible and stuff like that, because that wasn't something that I did. But yeah, that was always my favorite part about going to the doctor's office, was getting to read those books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
yeah, I
actually
think
so
it's
interesting. But that's just like we come back to the thing that the reason the world feels like they have to control women is because men won't control themselves. And that's like, that's one thing, but it's so the men have said you have to do this, thus, and that. But the women are the ones enforcing. Is if we would stop and just let everybody live their own life, do you know how much happier every woman on the planet would be if you really just quit looking at other women for your validation? Like, well, she has to be like me, and if she's different than me, then there's something either wrong with her, or you make yourself wrong because you think she's better than you.
and nobody's going to make themselves wrong, so it's always going to be on the
Yeah, it's
outside.
much
But
easier to make someone else wrong. But it's
yeah,
all
well,
because men want to control everybody. So now they just trained us. We're like little attack dogs. Like we're just doing their work for them. We're prowling the perimeter looking for a woman stepping out of line. And if she sleeps with two
well,
men, she's this. If she dresses the wrong way, she's that. If she chooses not to take, it's like there's a rule for everything. And every
well, and even
time,
if you don't do any of that, it's always in the back of your mind of, but
always,
if I do, I'm going to
yeah.
be the pariah. I'm
Yeah,
going to
and you
be
you
the,
have to
you
consider
know,
that. It will filter through your mind. It's like, if I do this, then that. And you can apply that to everything. And so we're just trying to reach a point where women are aware of what they believe and why they're doing what they do. And do they agree with it? Whether you
yeah.
do or you don't, great. But just, especially if you have children, you have to know why you believe what you believe, because those kids will test you. They will
As
they
we have
will debate
discovered.
you, and they're not going to come uneducated. They're going to do some
Yeah.
homework in some way, and they're going to come with their case. They're going to make their case on why what they're telling you is true. And so, if you're going to
Yeah.
disagree with them, you're going to have to know your stuff a little bit. Because my son does that to me all the time. It's like I won't
Uh,
enter a debate with him without coming to it, without doing my homework, because he will wipe the floor
well,
with
you know where
me.
I stand on that after this last week or two.
Yeah, he will wipe
um,
the floor with me on these kind of things.
yeah.
So,
So I think, because obviously we could talk about this forever, and maybe
yes,
we'll have to do another part version 2 or whatever. Um, I think the biggest takeaway from all of this for me would be like, we're never going to solution this, right? Like, I
no,
mean,
there's
this
no
is
one
this is a
size fits
huge
all
thing,
answer. Yeah.
but I really think it boils down to women really taking stock of why they believe what they believe,
Great.
and it's gonna be hard and painful, but it's like,
It's a,
you know,
yes.
not something like, why did you take your husband's last name? I mean, because that's a much bigger conversation, but like, look at it more internally, like, why am I wearing what I'm wearing, and what stories
Yes.
am I telling myself, right? Like, is it this purity culture thing where, you
Yes.
have to be buttoned
Or
up and you can't do X or Y,
yeah,
or,
or the
you know,
ageism or whatever. We're so in love with the older women who are wearing such bold colors because we've become so muted down. I keep talking about that because now it's in my awareness that people don't wear color anymore. Is it because we
not like
don't
they used
like
to, and look
color?
at me not wearing any color today.
Yeah, no, it's like, do we not like color, or we don't want to be looked at? We don't want to stand out because we know if we wear a bold color, like, the red lipstick challenge, telling a woman to put on red lipstick, some of them won't, will
Because
not
you're a
put it
harlot.
on. Yeah, because then
So
people are
yeah,
going,
I
they're going
think
to look
there, I,
at you. So we
I
just
think
want
really,
everybody to be aware because we want everybody to be able to step into who they are and be that because this is your life and
and
we
own
only
it
get one
and
go
enjoy
around.
it,
Yes.
and you know,
Have fun
um,
with it. Like, clothes should be fun. Makeup should be fun. Hair should be fun.
life should be
Should be
fun.
fun.
I
Yeah.
mean, and yes, I realize that the world is an absolute dumpster fire right now, and maybe clinging to some of these beliefs is the only thing that gets you through in a
Yes.
day, and that is
And that's
totally
okay.
fine.
Oh,
I get it.
absolutely.
The world is a dumpster fire, and if believing X or Y in the religion without questioning it makes you feel some kind of way and good, then we're not saying
If
don't.
it works for
It's
you,
just,
it works for you. Yeah.
yeah, it's just more of a, with all of the shit and caboodle that's going on down in the States with women's rights being rolled back, and seeing what, the women over in the Middle East go through daily.
Yeah.
It's more just about starting to really question why we believe these things. Because if a lot of it does come from religion, and there are umpteen thousand, like, I mean, that woman, I'm probably going to go for a meeting soon here, but that woman that was calling all of the different churches, right?
Yes.
Like, if the church is not helping, doesn't sit right, maybe sit with that, because obviously there's some rules there that
Yeah.
have been sort
Oh,
of,
speaking of that, and we're going to close with this, but there was several churches that jumped to the thing that this was a single mother, and therefore she was a whore, she was a Jezebel, that woman never said she was a single mother. She never said she wasn't married, but so many churches took that because she
interesting.
said, I'm a mother and I don't have formula for my child. And even if she were quote unquote single, not married, doesn't mean she doesn't have a partner. But
So there's
again,
an assumption then
there's
that
an
he
assumption.
would be providing for
Or
her
maybe your
if,
husband's dead. There's 100 reasons. Maybe your husband is deployed and they weren't getting, the military wasn't getting paid in the United States either because our
in
government was shut down. And so
in the world that we're in today, maybe he's unemployed.
maybe he's unemployed. And so, we just made a really big assumption that she was this whore mother running around making babies and that she couldn't feed, when in fact she's just like, no, I just need one can of formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it just boils down to, we don't have the solution. We just find it interesting. And if nothing else, just kind of trying to step back a little bit. And if there's something that doesn't feel right, or it's not sitting with you and you're sort of just accepting it because that's the way it is,
Yeah.
I would question, why do you think that? Why do you think people are telling you that? And I'm fairly certain that there is a better way. What that means to you in
Yeah.
your life, I can't tell you. We can't tell you,
No.
but it's just really stepping outside and starting to question some of this stuff. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I watch what's happening down in the States with like all of these rights being rolled back and things being overturned. And I think, oh, when is that going to hit Canada? Will it ever hit Canada, and or will it just hit us in a different way? And it's
Well,
terrifying.
unfortunately, this is like a mold. It spreads if you don't eradicate it. It does, and it's like it's not because your government might intentionally do that, but people from down here go up there and they
Yeah.
bring all their crap with them, and so that's
Yeah.
how it spreads, just person to persons. It's like a communicable virus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so I think we are far more powerful than religion. We are far more powerful if we came together and started questioning things a little bit more. And I think that's why there are all the rules, is
yes,
men
I
don't want us to
know,
realize
I
that. They don't
know.
want us to be in community. They
Yeah,
don't want us to be gathering at the river, washing our clothes together and gossiping and comparing notes anymore, right? Which is what we used to do.
yeah,
I don't know if we were happier back then. I wasn't living then, but I just
yeah,
know that we had a village, we had a community, and at some point in the last few decades, that started getting ripped apart.
right,
Even hundreds of years, maybe it started getting ripped
absolutely.
apart. And I think we need to start coming back together. But coming back together means questioning the status quo, which is scary.
It is
But that's why we're
terrifying.
here. We're here to help with
We are, and
that.
we actually have a VIP day that does exactly that, where you get the
Yes.
whole day, half of it with myself and half with Tracy, that we go down the rabbit holes with you and help you find a place where you feel good about what you're doing and who you are and how you're showing up. So we do have that, and we are running a superb, which I hate to have this in the permanent thing, but it's a superb Black Friday special. So if you're watching this next year, it probably will not be helpful to you, but this year
No.
it will be very helpful in
But
2025.
if you like, if you subscribe, if you share, if you comment, then you will always be able to come back and check out what else we are doing, because I'm
Yes,
sure over time we will add new things, but
we will.
we will be continuing with these opinion pieces. And I would actually like to hear of any rules that you've always sort of questioned but just gone along with,
Yeah.
and what would it mean to not
Like, yeah,
go
like if
along with
there's
them
something
anymore.
like you want to wear something in your closet, but you always hesitate because you don't think it would be acceptable. Well, why is that? And just tell us what the thing is and how it makes you feel, because it just maybe you don't want.
Or even just a belief,
Yeah,
like even just from your perspective with mindset, like a belief that you've had because your family's always done it, or your husband said so,
Yeah.
or your friends do it, or whatever. Like, I mean, there's
Yeah.
always
It could
something that
be
I think in the
anything.
back of our minds, like we question, but peer pressure or, the collective does it. So I guess
Yes.
that's what we do, right? And is
Yeah.
there something that you question, worry about, don't want to do, but you do because I would love
Or
to
you
know
don't
what
even
those are,
enjoy
because then maybe
doing
we
it. You
can,
do it because you're supposed to do it, not because you necessarily, but you're on autopilot. You just do
yeah,
it because that's what's done. And you
yeah,
don't think about it, but it kind of throws a wrench in your life somehow, just because it
yeah,
doesn't really feel great. And then you're like,
yeah,
okay, well, what is that thing? And then let's talk about it.
yeah, yeah.
All right, we were going to
And maybe we'll have to come back for a
transition.
part 2 of this part 3.
Yes, absolutely. All right, go get ready for your meeting, and I will talk to you in a bit, and we will see
You,
everyone in the next one.
you betcha. Bye.